Welcome, my friends. So happy to share with you this dish today. This is one of my core staple dishes. I playfully refer to it as Kionnison kale, named after my friend Kionnison, who showed me how to make it. This dish I eat probably 3 times a week at least, if not more, especially when I'm doing more active type of stuff, because you can blend, and I blend a lot, my greens, but it's also nice to chew and to really, enjoy the culinary experience of eating them. And this is probably my favorite way I've found to eat kale, because pretty hearty green, of course, as obviously. And this way, that you'll see with all the ingredients here that go into it, it just breaks it down really nice. Just to shout out and give you the list, I've got lacinato kale, organic of course if possible, salt and pepper, organic black pepper, and Pacific sea salt. I was on exclusively Himalayan for years and years, watched a very interesting bit by David Wolf talking about the sea salt being a little bit more bio-friendly, you could say. The Himalayan salt is very pure, but it's been in the earth for so many thousands of years. I still use it, but I've been leaning a little bit more towards the sea salt because it's a little bit more bioavailable in so many words. As he explained, and you can see what David Wolf has to say about salt. Very interesting. The other primary ingredients in here: a little bit of raw honey, apple cider vinegar, organic olive oil, and nutritional yeast. And this is raw olive oil as well. And sometimes I'll substitute or use coconut oil, but I think the olive oil has a little bit better of a flavor. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to mix these up first before I put in the greens. This is all just to taste. This isn't even, I don't even know how much. Let me see. 3 tablespoons of olive oil, let's say. Okay, I'm going to put an equal amount of this raw organic apple cider vinegar, which is the primary thing that's going to break down the kale. I'm going to add, I put my honey in the fridge because otherwise ants go crazy on it out here in the desert. And so it's kind of hard. And so that's why I mix this all up like this. It's about yay much of honey. Let's see, tablespoon. And grab another spoon here so I can get it off the spoon. And then what I'm going to do is just add the salt and pepper. And then the last thing, the very last thing, once I destem this kale, which is takes the most time of this whole recipe, is very easy, except washing and destemming the kale. And really look in there when you wash it, because on the underside of kale, you may not care, but being vegan, I'd rather not eat insects. You see these little white fuzzy insects, you could just get those off there with like a little produce, brush. I really go heavy on the black pepper with pretty much everything I make. I'm not a big cayenne guy. A lot of raw people are, and I was when I first started. I'm already a fire type, and I did what they call pitta, and I overheat way too. It's way too easy to overheat on cayenne. Black pepper has less of that tendency to cause that. So I use a lot of black pepper because, as I mentioned on previous videos, increased digestion and assimilation of all food and nutrients by up to 2,000%, very considerable. Then I'm going to put in here some salt. It's all, but I'm trying to think like, oh, how much is that? I don't know, half or even a quarter of a teaspoon. It's always to taste. And then once the honey has sat down in the vinegar and oil for a minute, it'll start to loosen up, and you want to kind of stir it. And that's all the ingredients, really. The last thing that's going to go in there, what I was getting at when I started talking about the kale, is the yeast. And so people are here and there on the yeast. Oh, it's bad, this and that. I've never had any problems with yeast, and I've never had it exacerbate candida. That's what people always say. Oh, it's going to make yeast infection. Now, if you have a yeast infection, okay, which by the way, just to use the word, just we're all on the same page. Jock itch is a yeast infection for men, okay? Just so you know. So if you have that, or yeast infection if you're a woman, you probably want to avoid yeast, common sense. But it's not like other, it's as far as all the yeasts go, I found it to be pretty user-friendly. And it's loaded with B12, as you know, and other minerals, especially the fortified one. And I find it to be, pretty user-friendly overall. And don't have a problem with it. So, but if you're not into yeast, you might not want to add it. But if you do, you probably want to add it last. I wouldn't put it in here. I like to put it on top because then it looks more like a cheese, okay? Now for the, rinse my hands real quick. A little bit of a clean freak. For the longest and most labor-intensive part of this process, as I mentioned, is de-stemming the kale. Which, just like in my morning soup, I stave the stems and I juice them later. So just a little sound bite. So I'm just going to go ahead and de-stem this kale. Okay, now I've de-stemmed all my kale, and I'm just making a small amount. See, one of those little bugs got past my gatekeepers when I washed this, but I caught it at least. And so I usually make a huge portion of this when I go through the process, 3 or 4 or 5 times as much as I have here. I'll get a big bowl and make it all at once because it actually lasts a long time. I'll make this and go on road trips and stuff, and it'll last for days if you keep it cold. So another thing that I do here is, like I said, everything at this point is in there except for the nutritional yeast here. So the way I do this is, because you need to stir this and kind of massage into the kale the sauce. And so I have this open, ready to go, and then this is a little yoga tidbit. I'm going to check which nostril is open. My left nostril. Because one of the highest sciences of all the yogas is called Swara Yoga. I'm just rinsing my left hand because that's the one I'm going to use to mix this up. And so what that means is whichever nostril is open, that's the side of your, it switches every 2 hours naturally. That's the side of your body the energy is flowing through. Alright? So there's a huge, huge science called Swara Yoga. I'm going to do whole videos on just that, and the different implications that has. But I kind of bless my food as I go. And so I'm going to use my left hand because that's the energy that chi's flowing through. And then I'll use my right hand to do whatever else in the kitchen, because as soon as you touch this, your hands are covered with it. And then you touch anything, and of course it's got sweet and the whole thing with the sauce and ants come and everything else. Plus I'm going to pour my nutritional yeast on there. So let's go ahead and begin. Put this out of the way. And I just want to kind of flip this over to get that sauce from the bottom up onto the kale. There we go. Now the kale is pretty much all on there, and I'm just going to kind of, massage it. It's just so simple. Just evenly distribute the sauce or the dressing, if you will, onto the whole thing. And I just love this recipe. I really can't say that enough, because, I don't care whether or not you're interested in vegan, vegetarian, plant-based culture or not. Human design, you're supposed to eat as many greens as you can. I mean, that's just a simple reality. And even vegans, they don't, generally. Even me, I was raw. I was just like, it's hard to get them all in there. You just get bored with greens. And this will really spice it up. I just love this recipe. I put it with other things as an opening dish. You can mix it up with rice or whatever other things, raw rice, or even cooked if you're into that. So that's pretty close to full. I'm not like crushing it in there. I'm not like using a lot of muscle. Like the vinegar will do its job, because especially if you want it to last longer, I wouldn't want to bruise it or whatever. If I was going to eat this all right now and I wanted it sooner, I would really just like massage it in there. But I want to have this last for a couple of days and just come back to it. So that's probably enough as far as massaging it. But of course, I do need to add this. The most hazardous part about this is that in my experience, is it's just you breathe this stuff. So be really mindful of not like dumping it in there. I mean, these are subtleties, but I do this often, so just kind of gently pour it in, one layer on top, and then stir it around, spread it around. It's evenly distributed. I usually do this in the sink because it gets little splatters of this dressing everywhere, and I don't want to attract ants, but I'm doing it here so you can see. I usually do it behind me in the sink, but I'm being very gentle today. I also usually use a bigger bin, so it's kind of like down deep in there, but then I'll store it in one of these Pyrex things. A little bit more of this, and we're pretty much there. Last detail you need to know about this recipe, which I pretty much already mentioned, is you need to let it sit for a while. I wouldn't eat this straight away. If you just start eating kale without letting the vinegar break it down, the ACV, apple cider vinegar, it all might talk back to you. I mean, it takes a pretty gnarly digestive system to handle straight up raw kale unless you blend it or have some dressing like this. So again, that's why I love it, and I eat it all the time. So it's pretty much a done deal. And again, doing it this way, where you add the nutritional yeast last, will give it a nice cheesy look and feel. Whereas if you just threw it in there and mixed it up with everything else, like I mixed all the other ingredients in the beginning, it'll just kind of become part of the sauce and you won't notice it, which is fine too. I've done that. Ordinarily, I'd be holding this on the outside, but it's almost empty. So I'm probably going to finish it up here very soon, contaminating the inside with my fingers in there. But who's perfect? So that is a finished Kionisan kale salad. Thank you guys for sharing this wonderful recipe with me. So now my hand is completely covered in dressing. After I turn off the camera, I'm going to lick my fingers, because I don't want to waste anything. But there you go, Kionisan kale for your culinary pleasure and your raw empowerment. I offer you this recipe with joy in my heart and humility. Practice well, be well.